We're starting today's explainer by looking at a city that history has already judged. Just imagine standing right here at sunset, surrounded by the colossal ruined pillars of the Karnak temple. The deep shadows are slowly swallowing up the intricate carvings on the sandstone, and the desert wind is blowing dusts through the cracks of a civilization that honestly believed it was eternal. We aren't here today just to rattle off dry historical dates. We're here to slowly uncover a really profound, deeply unsettling warning about human nature, institutional decay, and the quiet death of an empire, long before a single enemy ever reached its gates. It's the year 663 BCE. The formidable Assyrian army arrives at the gates of Thebes, fully expecting a brutal, bloody siege against the greatest metropolis of the ancient world. But when they finally touch the gates of Karnak, there are no miracles from the heavens. There are no volleys of arrows raining down from the proud city walls. There's just silence. Thebes didn't fight back at all. Because you see, the city had already died from a decades-long spiritual suicide. To really grasp how this happened, we've got to understand the grand illusion these people were living under. Wazit, which was the ancient name for Thebes, wasn't just a capital city to them. For centuries, the Egyptians believed this place was the literal axis of the universe. During the peak of the 18th and 19th dynasties, they truly believed that god Amun-Ra stepped down right here to create the world, promising them absolute eternal protection. So the pharaohs hoarded the wealth of the known world, pouring it into these temples, utterly convinced that this divine favor guaranteed their safety forever. Which brings us to this incredibly heavy, central mystery. Why did the era of Thebes' greatest material wealth result in literally zero defense? How can a society hoard the most gold in its entire history, boast the highest number of priests on record, and yet possess absolutely zero capacity to protect itself? Just let that paradox sit with you for a moment. To solve it, we have to look past the golden murals and dig into the psychology of the elite. The answer starts with an idea, a really beautiful one actually, that got deeply corrupted over time. Ma'at was the ancient Egyptian concept of universal harmony and order. But by this late stage, the elite priesthood had completely twisted it. They started to believe that as long as they simply performed the correct rituals and kept the temple fires burning, they had a blank check from the gods. They treated Ma'at like an automatic guarantee of survival, no matter how completely detached they became from the actual reality of the world outside those temple walls. To see how that illusion fueled their collapse, we have to look away from those glorious sunlit murals of the pharaohs and step down into the cold, grim reality of the archaeological record. Because the truth of an empire's health isn't found in what its leaders carve onto their monuments. It's found in the physical evidence of the rot underneath. 153. That is the exact number of high priest skeletons discovered hidden away in the massive Bab el Ghassus cache at Deir el-Bahari. This hidden layer of history gives us the forensic evidence we need. When archaeologists actually began analyzing these remains, they uncovered a brutal physical record of a deeply unequal society that was quietly tearing itself apart from the inside. The bones themselves actually tell the story of the disconnect that killed Thebes. On one side, anthropological analysis of those 153 priests reveals smooth, unblemished bones. They're like polished jade. These men never lifted a stone. They never felt the burning desert dust of the gold mines. On the exact opposite side, the remains of the laborers and stonecutters, the people who actually built the empire, show shattered, crushed, and deformed spines. The elite were living in a completely different physical reality than the working class sustaining them. And the economic reality, it was just as parasitic. The temple priesthood managed to control 30% of the absolute best prime farmland along the Nile. Karnak wasn't just a place of worship anymore. It was basically acting as a monopolistic central bank. They relentlessly extracted wheat, olive oil, and gold from the population. But instead of reinvesting that wealth into public works or infrastructure or flood defenses to actually help the people, they just hoarded it away. What's absolutely crucial to understand here is the sheer cognitive blindness of Karnak's leadership. They took all this immense wealth extracted from the people and locked it inside closed ritual rooms. They were plating lifeless statues in solid gold, while the actual fabric of their society decayed around them. It's the ultimate metaphor for institutional arrogance. They were essentially gilding the steering wheel of a sinking ship, honestly believing that the sheer splendor of the wheel would somehow calm the ocean, rather than actually going down into the dark to patch the hole in the hull. And you know, this sheer arrogance bled directly into their military. While the rest of the world was waking up to the brutal, unforgiving Iron Age, which was represented perfectly by the sharp, black iron weapons of the professional Assyrian armies, the rigid institutions of Thebes clung stubbornly to outdated soft bronze swords. Their systems were just too ossified to adapt or reform. They fully expected their divine protection to save them, completely ignoring the terrifying technological reality marching right toward their borders. They had completely forgotten an iron rule of history. The gods do not forge swords. Men must do it themselves. They essentially outsourced their survival to a symbol, and the ultimate cost of that delusion would be absolute. Now, whenever leadership abandons reality like this, it's always the common citizens who end up paying the ultimate price. Let's take a look at what actually happened to the ordinary people of Thebes when they finally realized that the system they had given everything to was completely bankrupt. As the crisis worsened, the cold, hard reality of the ancient marketplace took over. For centuries, people had traded real, tangible goods for temple magic. But suddenly, a blue ceramic amulet from the temple meant absolutely nothing. It was worthless for survival. Instead, a simple jar of olive oil became a literal lifeline. When starving mothers walked through those cold afternoon markets, it finally hit them. The ringing golden bells of the temple couldn't feed their children. The magic was dead. And with that devastating realization comes the total collapse of faith. Because, you see, a civilization finally falls when its people no longer see any reason to defend the very institutions exploiting them. Starving citizens lost all belief in gods that remained totally silent to their suffering. Any lingering loyalty to that wealthy, detached priesthood simply vanished. So, when the invasion finally arrived, there was a complete refusal by the people to shed their blood to protect the very temples that had bled them dry. This desperation reached a truly heartbreaking climax in the days right before the city fell. Driven by sheer starvation, the citizens of Thebes did the unthinkable. They actually marched into the Valley of the Kings and began desecrating and looting the sacred royal tombs of their own ancestors. They were dragging mummies from their coffins just to scrape together pieces of gold to trade for bread. It wasn't just theft, it was the total psychological collapse of a 3,000-year-old worldview. Looking back, we have to see the dust of Thebes as a mirror. We really need to acknowledge this timeless cycle of civilizations. The story of Karnak's fall in the 7th century BCE isn't just some dry bone sitting in a museum display case. It's a mournful, deeply unsettling reflection of the exact same vulnerabilities built into the foundation of any complex society. Because human nature instinctually repeats these exact same errors across millennia, civilizations slowly start to value their complex symbolic systems way more than the actual material reality that keeps them alive. They start measuring their power through expanding abstract metrics, whether that's the height of a golden statue back then or the glow of numbers on a modern financial screen today. And all the while, the elites become completely physically detached from the working class. When a society walks this path, it's simply following in the quiet footsteps of the Karnak priests. So, when the Assyrian emperor Ashurbanipal finally breached those gates and looted the wealth of Thebes, he wasn't defeating a great enemy. Not really. He was merely sweeping up a soulless corpse. The city had already died years prior, hollowed out from the inside by its own arrogance, leaving absolutely nothing behind but an empty shell for the conqueror to claim. It leaves us with a final, haunting truth. Empires rarely fall because they weaken from the outside. Mostly, they fall because they've stopped looking at the truth. Today the Nile still flows quietly past those silent ruins of Thebes. And it kind of leaves you wondering, when we look at our own modern structures, are we seeing genuine strength, or just another illusion waiting for the wind